Hello, I'm Thomas Fuller from Omny Law, and in this module we're looking at ending employment the right way, one of the higher risk areas for any manager. Even when a decision feels clear, ending employment without a clear reason or without following a right process can lead to serious legal consequences. A termination of employment can be brought about in several different ways, but most common are the employee giving the employer notice to terminate the contract, and so the employee resigns from their employment. The second is that the employer gives notice to the employee to terminate the contract. But where an employee has the right to bring a claim of unfair dismissal in a tribunal, which is based on the employee having 2 complete years of service, an employer will need to demonstrate it dismissed the employee for one of 5 potentially fair reasons. These are conduct, capability, redundancy, statutory restriction, which is, for example, someone not having the right to work in the UK, or a wider catch-all category called some other substantial reason for dismissal. Whatever reason is being relied on by the manager to terminate the employee's employment, the law will generally require the employer to follow a fair process, giving the employee the opportunity to comment on the reasons why they are being dismissed and that they are communicated with throughout the process. It is not just about delivering an outcome to the employee. Be mindful that as of the 1st of January 2027, employees only need 6 months' service to bring a claim of unfair dismissal, so following a fair process and clearly communicating the reason for that person's dismissal will soon become more important. When it comes to ending an employee's employment, here are the main steps to follow. Firstly, whatever reason is being relied on to dismiss an employee, make sure that reason is explained to them. Whilst it's not fatal to dismiss someone for one reason, but it possibly being categorised as something else later on, identifying early the specific reason or reasons and categorising them correctly will help avoid a legal headache if the decision is challenged. In a disciplinary scenario, it should be made clear to the employee what the allegations are against them and which of those allegations are upheld as justifying the decision to terminate their employment. In a capability matter, it should be explained to the employee what standards they are expected to meet and why they have not made satisfactory progress towards those expectations. In a redundancy case, the employee should be advised early on of the reasons why their role is at risk of redundancy. And if they are to be made redundant, then the state of affairs in the business should be explained to them as the reason why they are being made redundant. But just having a reason to dismiss is only one part of it. And so the second important step that the law expects you as a manager to take is to ensure that reason is treated fairly by way of a proper process too. In a disciplinary case, the employee will usually be expected to advise the employee of the problem, investigate the concern thoroughly, allow the employee the opportunity to respond to those concerns, to provide them with the evidence relevant to those concerns, and to give them a right of appeal if a sanction is imposed. In a capability matter, the employer will usually be expected to identify to the employee what standards they are expected to meet, to provide support and guidance to them before considering termination, and giving them fair warning by way of review of their performance that their employment may be terminated if they do not improve. In a redundancy case, the manager can be expected to show the employee how they considered who was to be placed at risk of redundancy, how those individuals were scored against the selection criteria, and that alternative to dismissal or alternative employment was considered and explored before making the employee redundant. Whichever reason is given, following a process which engages with the employee and allows them the opportunity to make representations to you as to why they should not be dismissed is vital for showing it was fair. And if the employee's employment does come to an end, then you should make sure that they are paid the correct notice under the contract if they are entitled to it. Terminating someone's employment will unlikely ever be taken well. And so finally, when communicating your decision to the employee, make sure you do it in as respectful a way as possible, remaining calm and factual as to why the decision has been made, and make sure that you follow up the decision in writing by way of an outcome letter, which also summarises the reason for the decision and, where applicable, how they can appeal that decision. There are a few common mistakes that I see managers making, and the first one is rushing to make a decision. As we've discussed, a thorough process is just as important as the rationale for any decision you make. But rushing a decision may lead you to make incorrect conclusions or assumptions about a situation, which in turn can fatally undermine both the reason for the termination and the process that you follow. Following the steps we have discussed will help you avoid those risks. The next is poor communication. Just telling someone they are dismissed is only part of the job. You need to ensure the employee is communicated with throughout the process, and whatever decision is made, it is clearly communicated to them at the time and in writing later on. This leads on to the final mistake I often see, which is poor record keeping. It is always best to keep written records of each conversation you have with the employee, a list of documents relied on to make a decision, and evidence of a decision being communicated to the employee, usually by way of an outcome letter. Given the risks associated with dismissal, it is always best to seek advice from legal or HR advisors before making a decision to terminate someone's employment. This will help you identify whether all the correct steps have been taken before communicating that decision, or whether further information needs to be obtained before you make that decision. Thank you very much for listening, and you can find more guidance and practical resources on the Breathe Growth Academy.